Hi guys, Luke here from the Bike Guru. So we're just going to walk you through a bleed process, pretty much what we do for the finish off on suspension. So we got a couple of bit of equipment now, we'll show you in a little bit. So we got a DVO Jade over here, Jade X, that we've already serviced. What we're going to do is run it through the vacuum pump, then we're going to fill it with nitrogen and then run it through our new testing equipment. So what we do over here is, first off, because of ESCOM, we always disconnect everything and don't want any surging through nice expensive equipment. Turn this on. And then what we'll do is we'll set our pressures, what we want to do. So we already know which tank we have. I've already filled it with the oil that I want to use. I'm going to select bleed shock. This is a bladder shock. It runs a bladder on it. I like to run my own custom intervals. They're all different, so I don't really bother with saving them. So I'm going to run a 2.5 minute vacuum cycle. I'm going to pressurize it for 1.5 minutes. Then I'm going to do so again. We have already run this through the vacuum pump once. We had a slight issue behind the back of the bladder, which is a common problem, but typically I would also run 3 cycles. And then here I can adjust my vacuum. So if you look over here, we've got a negative 12.9 psi vacuum. So I'm going to drop that down a slight bit. What you can do is pull air from the atmosphere around everything. So I'm going to run it at 11.6 and then pressurize it slightly softer at 39.16. So once that's all done, we click OK. It's going to say that the shock absorber is empty because I only really put in 1 liter of oil at a time, and this thing holds 6. So anywho, connect our adapter. I really love to use this little glass full reservoir. It gives us a great indication of if there's air in the system. Also stops any bubbles that come from the line going back through into the shock. Connect up over here, and then I just drop it down to the bottom. I don't like to leave it up over here. Ideally I will change the setup in the future, but for now I will just put it down onto this guy over here, and then it will start its vacuum cycle. So you can see the air starting to pull slowly through here. So all suspension is a vacuum, or at least these rear shocks are vacuum bled. In other words, we need to remove all the air from the system, and then this is an automatic pump, so it will repressurize itself at the end in terms of pressurizing the oil back through the system. You can see the damper slowly pulling in on itself. That's exactly what we want. That indicates that it's kind of done everything right. We're pulling out a good vacuum, and then once this shuts off on itself, if we start getting globs of oil coming through, then it'll show us that either we're pulling out a too hard a vacuum or we've got an error in the shock. Alrighty, so now we've got the system is pulling itself. You can see the damper shaft pushing out. So now we're going to have what I've set as 1 minute 30 seconds of pressure on the shock. So it's just going to make sure that all the oil has gone into the cavities that it's needed. And I'll take you to the next step. Alrighty, so now we've got everything sorted. We're going to disconnect it. I like to always turn the pump off, depressurize it kind of between everything. I'm pedantic like that. Look after your equipment, look after you. Alrighty, so we disconnect the reservoir glass, unthread the adapter. You're going to have an oil overflow, drop that in there. We'll tighten up. We do land up putting a little plastic piece inside of it that just prevents people from opening that up unnecessarily, because this will be pressurized, and then they'll get oil all over themselves. So again, I just like to turn my tank off, depressurize everything. Still got to perfect everything in terms of putting copper piping and all that, but here's what we have. Okay, so I've got the little Shrider adapter over here. Just going to unscrew the little RockShox adapter. So this system people can self-pressurize, which is quite unique to DVO, so between a range of 140 to 180 PSI. So I'm going to open up the tank over here. I'm just going to ask the camera person to step away, maybe just off to the left over here. In case anything blows, it's going to blow this direction. I like to open everything up a little bit just so that it doesn't fill unnecessarily high. We'll start opening the tank slowly. We are at a range of 200 PSI. That will drop, so now it's safe that you can come back this side. You then got oxygen in the line, so you've got to put nitrogen through it, and then it'll reset itself. We're still at 200, so I'm going to come out a tad, and then dial myself back into where I want to be. Always do get quite a bit of wastage, and then we can connect up here. Everything is open, so dials are open, rebound settings are all open. Connect up. Just nice and tight. And then fill the shock nice and slowly. Here we'll be able to know if we have any leaks in the system at all. See, it dropped a little bit in pressure, and I've got another double gauge on the side here just to make sure. I'm going to fill it up to 180. Then I turn the line off, check the gauge for a little bit just to see if it's going to drop in pressure a little bit. Because it's a Schrader valve, these do tend to lose a bit of pressure when removing, so I'm just going to up it a tiny bit. I always like to be able to come back. Okay, so now we got nitrogen in the system. Get our little reservoir cap, put that on, and now we come to the new hand dyno. So you guys are in for a treat, as am I. It's the first time I'm actually utilizing this. Just going to clean up my hands. Stop. Cool. Okay, so now what we do is shock will go onto here. We're just checking the damper unit now. We can check it with the spring on as well. The reason we have these machines is a lot of the time we also don't have the bicycle. Putting shocks back onto the bicycle takes time on and off. Time is valuable. We also like to control all variables, so if the shock comes in not behaving, we'll be able to tell immediately. Also, prior to sending the shock out, we can guarantee that everything's working. You can actually see on the screen over here, if you go this side, there's a tiny little bit of force being pushed, and when I actuate the machine, it'll give an indication. Okay, then I can lock out the shock, test the lockout function, mid-stroke, see how much force needs to be generated through here. Very basic setup, nothing super fancy. We then dial in the rebound, check that the rebound is working, so this will come up nice and slowly. Yeah, and I mean, I've only just mounted this. It's fantastic, works great. I have realized now I'm gonna have to move this forward. The arm blocks out itself over here, unfortunately. I'll just make myself a little pivot. This is a really old table. We're just using what we have right now. Thanks to the guys at Lubber 7. Stuff is amazing.